so they can start to clean up. And then the same with your crock pots and anything. If you want to take those away, that'd be great. And as far as kids, so downstairs, we don't have someone designated to watch kids downstairs. So if your kids go down there, someone needs to be helping watch. So just know where they're at. I guess as far as from the search committee, we've had a lot of good visits with James and Paige. We had dinner Friday night, and they've been here since Thursday. Got to meet a lot of different people and attend a few different things. I think the visit's been going really well. And so we have some questions that we'd like to make sure that get hit from the search committee. But otherwise, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. We have some microphones that will get passed around, and feel free to ask some questions. So we'll start with just a little bit of a background and a bio from James and Paige.
So my name is James Kostelik. I have been the Director of Youth Ministries at Bradenton Christian Reformed Church for the past 2.5 years. And then before that, I was kind of a pastoral intern at Munster Christian Reformed Church in Northwest Indiana. So I've kind of been doing ministry stuff for about 5 years. But really my whole life. So I'm a pastor's kid. So I kind of grew up in the ministry, kind of understanding the ministry, watching my dad. So we've moved around a lot as pastors' kids. I spent a lot of time in New Mexico. My dad pastored 3 churches on the Navajo reservation. So I went to Rehoboth. I see that you guys support Rehoboth. I went to Rehoboth until I was in 6th grade, and then we moved to Northwest Indiana to Hammond Christian Reformed Church, where my dad pastored there for probably 12 years. And my wife and I met in middle school when we moved to Northwest Indiana, and we were friends just all throughout our childhood. And then when we were both, she was done with college, and I was a little bit more mature, she decided that she wanted to date and marry me, so that was good for me. I'm not sure what she thinks about that, but so we're just really happy to be here. We have 4 kids. Our oldest is Teddy, he is 6, and then Walter, or Wally, is 4. Artie is 2, and then Emmy, a baby girl, is 6 months old. So I'll let my wife add to that if she wants to.
Sure. I'm Paige. I grew up in the Midwest, Northwest Indiana, Illinois. My maiden name is Heisinga, so very Dutch. I'm sure I can play a lot of Dutch bingo with all of you. I went to Hammond CRC, that's where I met James. I went to Dordt College, I guess Dordt University now. It's so nice. I'm a little bit jealous about how nice it looks compared to when I was there. But anyways, I love Dordt. Then I went back to Indiana. I got my degree in education, so I taught for a couple years, and then I went back and I got my master's in library science. So loved the library, and I was a K-8 librarian. So, now I'm just, I'm home with the kids. When I just actually stepped down from my position at the church in Florida. I was the secretary for a couple years, doing the bulletin and things like that, social media. So, but I'm just looking forward to being home with my kids. This seems like a wonderful community for kids. So we're happy to see all the little ones run around and wrestle.
All right, did anyone have a question that they want to start off with? We can kind of get the ball rolling. So we had a lot of questions that we asked at dinner the other night, but one of them that I guess I really liked the answer to, and the discussion that came from it was your favorite part of ministry for yourself.
So my favorite part of ministry, it really has to do with people. I mean, I feel like I'm called to ministry to love people, to pour into people. So if you kind of ask me, what is kind of the heart of ministry for me, it's really pastoral care. Everything I do is pastoral care. So if I'm in the pulpit, that's a way to do pastoral care to the whole congregation all at once. If I'm kind of meeting one-on-one with somebody, then I get to directly do pastoral care. if I'm discipling people, I always like to make that kind of theological education or that discipleship applicable, right? I'm kind of bringing in real life examples. Why does this matter for your life? That sort of thing. Because I'm really just trying to care for that person's heart. And then even administration, that's kind of the bane of a lot of pastors. I mean, I don't love it, but I do it gladly and joyfully because when I'm well organized and when I administrate well, then I can do pastoral care well. So that's really kind of the heart of ministry for me. That works out into a lot of different things. I'd say my favorite parts of ministry, I do really enjoy preaching. I feel like it's one of my gifts. I also just love, since I'm the director of youth ministries, I love to interact with my youth group. I love kind of just pouring into them and discipling them, having fun with them, just kind of, kids just can see right through you. So just being really genuine and being myself with kids is so much fun. But then also getting them to have that time where you can kind of take that extra step and really pour into them. And once you've won their trust, you can disciple them and just kind of show them Christ's love and point them to really good truths for their life. So yeah, I would say kind of like the preaching aspect and then the teaching discipleship aspect as well are two of my favorite things I get to do in ministry. And then again, also just I really like people. This is kind of coming in and out, sorry. I really like people, so just kind of one-on-one, small groups, just getting to spend time with people is something that I've always loved and enjoyed. So.
All right, does anyone in the crowd have a question they'd like to ask? Boss wants to vote. One of the things I think in your questionnaire that you answered was that you said you're proudly Reformed. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Reformed tradition. My dad's been a CRC pastor my whole life. He's still a CRC pastor in northern Michigan, up in Rudyard, in the UP. So just being in the Reformed faith from childhood really has just given me an appreciation for it. I think and this is what I teach all my students, but when somebody asks you, what does it mean to be Reformed, right? Sometimes you're like, oh, well, how would I really answer that question? Because it's such a big thing. But I think the best way to kind of answer it right off the bat is that I trace my faith tradition, my faith heritage, back to the Reformers, and then beyond them to the Church Fathers. So I belong to a historic faith. I belong to a faith that kind of didn't just start out of nowhere, but it's a faith that you can actually trace back through the saints, through the years, all the way to the apostles, to Christ, and honestly to the Israelites, to the first church. So that's kind of for me what I think of when I think of being proudly Reformed is just kind of being part of this church that has existed for all time, right? As the Bethel Confession teaches us. And then to add to that, just kind of I love the confessions, I love Reformed liturgy, I love the Reformed emphasis on God's sovereignty and just kind of all the good stuff about Reformed theology is just something that I nerd out about. So, and I try to get my students, and right now I'm teaching an adult Sunday school class, and I found that I'm getting the adults excited about it too. So, yeah.
Wendy?
Yeah,
You got a microphone coming if you want.
now I'll just yell. I know that I've been hearing through the pastor and everything that there's kind of been a division with the CRC in the core. I'm not sure, Pastor. I'm not going to say it right. But I know there's more of a conservative branch and maybe more of a liberal branch. And I was just wondering, what is your thought on, where is your vision on that? Are you,
Sure. Do you have any specific things you wanted to ask on as far as, decisions from Synod, stuff like that? Do you have any specific questions? Or more in general, the direction of the denomination?
Yeah, just I know where our church is going, and I just want to know what his thought, what his thoughts are, if they're in line, I guess.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I support the. I don't support the way this mic is going in and out.
Take 2 steps that way
This way?
and
Okay.
1 step in.
Okay, is that better? Okay, perfect. So I support all the decisions that Synod has made over the past couple of years. I think they're bringing the denomination kind of back in a biblical direction, in a Christ-honoring direction, kind of back in line with kind of what we believe as historically Reformed Christians. So I do support kind of what's happening in the denomination. I know some people can get really frustrated, like, oh, it's not happening quick enough, or, we need to, like, get in there and really start to, smack people in the heads with Reformed doctrine. And, I just encourage people to be patient, you know what I mean? If you look at all kind of the church councils throughout church history, these decisions took hundreds of years. So if, these decisions in our denomination take, 5 to 10 years, that's okay. But yeah, I do support kind of the direction our denomination is going in. It's been really, what's the word? It's been really helpful for me because again, I love the Reformed faith, I love the Reformed tradition, and to kind of just see the denomination kind of getting back in line with what I would consider is just sort of biblical faithfulness is really important and really comforting to me. So.
Frank?
So, I know you spent some time as a roofer, and so you had the chance to not just go directly from school to the seminary. And can you tell us how that made a difference into your walk of faith, and also how did that cement the idea to go to seminary? And then a question for faith as well. How did that work for you? You did marry a minister, so how did that come along?
Sure. So, so just a little bit of history on that. So after high school, really in high school, I kind of maybe perceived that I might have a call on my life. And when I went to college, I went to Kuiper College, or Reformed Bible College, as it used to be called. And I went for a year, and I realized that I just wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to kind of step into that seriousness or that maturity, and so I made the decision to just kind of end my college career after the first year of college and get a job as a roofer. And so I worked as a roofer really for 10 years, and as Frank is kind of alluding to, learned a lot from it. Really learned what kind of people in seminary don't learn. Kind of what people in the pews are going through. You know what I mean? When somebody who kind of works a 9 to 5, or not even a 9 to 5, but like a 7 to a 7 or a 6 to a 7, working like 12 hours a day. Really working with your hands, and it kind of reminds me of Jesus. He started out as a carpenter, and Paul as a tent maker. Just kind of learning a skill, learning a trade. And I think it's so God-honoring to work with your hands and to work with your body and to just produce things for God's kingdom. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a sort of a spiritual message. I think the lived out testimony of all God's saints through the way they work and the way they live is so important. So really kind of being, a lot of people just roll right into ministry after high school, and I didn't do that. So I'm really thankful for the path God took me on. There were a lot of times where I wondered, God, I thought I felt a call in high school into ministry. Why am I still roofing, after 8-9 years? And God was faithful, and I remained encouraged and learned what I needed to learn. And I mean, learning a trade is so useful and so valuable. And I've even used that gift of roofing, that ability to bless people in my church. After the hurricanes last year, I just told everyone, hey, if you need some help, I'm there for you. Just let me know what you need. So, is there another part of that question?
I guess Peyton's viewpoint.
Sure.
Marrying a pastor.
Yeah.
And then coming into
Yeah, I met James, and I didn't really think that. I knew he had a call to ministry, but I didn't really know what that would entail. But I would say that God has definitely been through us our entire relationship. And I told him this when we were dating, but I remember when I was in high school and we were in church and he was sitting in front of me. And I just remember we were doing like liturgy, we were singing or we were doing something. And I just felt the Lord say, this is the man that you're going to marry. And I was 16 and I'm like, definitely not, no way. And I don't know, like especially after Dort coming back to the area, it was definitely God that brought us together. And I guess I'm not really surprised that we are in ministry. Yeah, he's been there at the beginning of our relationship, and yeah, that's just always been a part. So especially when he was doing License to Exhort at Munster, I just knew he did have a gift. And I guess what's nice about like his path is, you know, we're slowly getting into ministry. So I supported him through that, and then going to Florida, I really like being a part of his ministry and God's ministry with the kids. And yeah, I just feel it's been a very natural progression, and I'm not really surprised, but I'm happy to be along for the ride.
Yeah, just a little bit more of that. I grew for 10 years, and in 2018, I went back to school online to get a counseling degree. And about midway through that counseling degree is when my pastor at Munster Christian Reformed Church asked if I wanted to do a license to exhort. He recognized giftings in me. And that really, so there was that external call, and then I had the internal call, and those two calls kind of came together. And that's really what launched me into ministry. But so for like the first 2 years of ministry, I was considered like a lay preacher, right? I was doing lay ministry. I didn't have seminary education. I was really just kind of finishing my work week as a roofer and preaching a sermon every couple Sundays. And I chaired the outreach committee at that church. And so it was really cool to just kind of really be just kind of a lay leader and a lay minister in my church. And then once I graduated with my undergrad, really just felt that call directly into seminary, and it's really just developed more and more from there. So, but I'm so glad that call is on my life, and it's been fun to just see where the Lord has been taking me through it.
I have a question. I'm interested in knowing what brought you specifically here to this building in Churchill, Montana. Whether you got to move in a certain way, or how did you speak to you to be right here at this moment?
It's Klaus's fault. So I got an email from your search committee. Klaus had suggested my name, and I got an email from your search committee, and I just kind of started that conversation because I was curious. Manhattan, Montana, Churchill, Montana, I've never heard of it. And so just kind of going through that process and talking to the search committee, just kind of hearing more and more stuff that I liked, and really getting more and more curious, what might God be doing here? Kind of got us to the point where, we really kind of said, hey, yeah, we'd love to take a visit, we'd love to meet people, we'd love to kind of see the potential for ministry here, see, this would just be such an amazing opportunity for me to grow in my ministry and for my family to grow as a pastor's family and just as a family in general. So really, it's the Lord orchestrating everything every step of the way. And sometimes I think about how crazy it is that Klaus, one of our winter residents, has heard me preach a handful of times, and he brought my name back to Montana, and just the way the Lord has kind of worked through every step of the way to bring me here. It's just been, it's His sovereign hand on all of it. So we're so glad to be here this morning.
I'm just curious, brother, how do you handle criticism? Because, anytime you influence people, and I can see that, you influence people for the kingdom and for eternity, there's going to be pushback, not just from the devil, but pushback sometimes from people who do not want to be influenced. How do you find yourself in terms of handling criticism? And my second question, if we related to it, I'd like to know who some of your mentors are in terms of, mentors, authors, and so forth, or whatever.
How do I handle criticism? One really good piece of advice that was given to me, well, actually two pieces of advice. The first is always be curious. So if you're curious about what somebody's bringing to you, it's a little bit harder to be offended. And so even if somebody's coming to you or coming to me, and they're just being really critical and really unloving, if I'm curious, then I can actually, maybe there actually is something there, right? Maybe there is a good piece of constructive feedback to gain from this person, even if it's kind of like a really critical remark. The second piece of advice is only listen to the people that love you. So really kind of just take feedback from the people who love you. And I feel like so that if somebody loves me and they actually do have good feedback for me, then that feedback will come in a loving way. And so, again, they're just kind of like taking that feedback from, again, people who love me and who care for me and who actually want to see me grow. Kind of value that above the criticism. So, and then in terms of mentors and authors, I would say first and foremost, my dad has just been the best mentor for me. Just the model of what a pastor looks like. My dad is a very human person, and so he's really helped me understand what it means to be above reproach. Because my dad isn't perfect, but my dad is most certainly above reproach. And then I've had a couple other pastors. My pastor at Munster Christian Reformed Church was a wonderful mentor to me, especially as I did my license to exhort. And then my current pastor right now, his name is Pastor DJ Milgate. He's been a wonderful mentor to me as well. In terms of authors, I really like Kevin DeYoung. I think he's a solid young Reformed guy. A lot of the stuff I read from him is really good. Let's see. I really like Alistair Begg. I think he's got a solid, like a Scottish accent. He's fun to listen to. And then Paul Washer. I like Paul Washer. So that's just three of them. I mean, I've got a shelf full of guys that I like to read. So, but yeah, I really kind of like the young, new, reformed pastors that are just doing so much awesome stuff for young people. So.
I do have a follow-up to that question, and a great answer, but how do you deal with people that don't love you then?
That's when the curiosity comes into play, right? So maybe I should have done it backwards. Like, listen to people you love, and then if somebody who's kind of giving you criticism in an unkind way, then listen with curiosity. Because even if it's coming in an unkind way, there might be something there for me. There might be something to just sort of be curious about. And so just kind of remaining just a little bit detached from that. So if I know somebody loves me, then I'll kind of lean into them and really kind of learn from them. And if they don't, then I'll make sure there's kind of a healthy space. But then, hey, maybe that person does have something for me to learn. So I hope maybe that's a better way to answer it. So.
Pastor James, just thinking about the elderly a little bit. Us elderly people are kind of hard to visit with sometimes. And a lot of people here in this community live to be in their 90s, and just wondering your feeling of visiting the elderly and those who need special care or suffering through different illnesses.
Yeah, so, kind of like I said, the pastoral care element is something I love, and visiting is something I love. Usually when I leave a visit, I feel like I've gotten more from that person than I've given. So, I really feel like people have been able to pour into me through those visits. One of the things I love to do, since I'm the director of youth, is I like to take young people with me on my visits. So whether it's, there's a place in Bradenton called Westminster Manor where about 8 or 9 of our church members live. And so it's kind of a good concentrated place. And I like to bring a handful of youth group kids there. And it's just such a blessing to bring those kids there with me and just facilitate that interaction. And it's always such a breath of fresh air, for those elderly congregants. And so, if I were called here, that would definitely be something that I would try to start. But yeah, honestly, visiting is something that, that's kind of the way God's built my heart. You know, I love visiting with people that, you know, the elderly, absolutely, you know, and just kind of finding what they need and encouraging them. And like I said, honestly, learning more from them than I have to give to them. I mean, they have such a life of wisdom to give, if people are just willing to listen. So, absolutely.
Around the corner here.
What would you say is the biggest area for growth in the like CRC? There are problems that we're having within the church or even out of the church that like we need to address?
We wouldn't know it here, but I think the average age of the CRC is kind of right around 55 or 60. So the CRC is getting older, and so it's really kind of refining what we have to offer the younger generations. And again, I feel like people are really hungry for something historic, something deep, something rooted. And you see a lot of people kind of coming in and looking for that. They want something that's old and something that's lasted the test of years. I think a lot of you know, I don't want to kind of pick on any kind of one faith tradition, but when you kind of look at some of the things that goes on in broad evangelicalism and just kind of the way they unhitch themselves from church history and from creeds and from confessions, that works for a while, but then people start to want more. They want more. And I think the Reformed Church really has that to offer, but I think the challenge is communicating that and helping people understand that. And maybe in some ways kind of contextualizing that Reformed, you know, those Reformed ideas for younger people to understand. But yeah, I just think, you know, that's kind of one of the big challenges, you know, that we're facing. You know, and I think a lot of churches too kind of feel that competition with, you know, the broad evangelical churches or the big mega churches, or, you know, the churches that maybe have something a little bit more entertaining or attention grabbing or emotional to offer. And a lot of times, I think, especially CRC churches, when they see their membership kind of going in that direction, tend to maybe sometimes overreact and say, oh, well, we should be more like that, so we keep our people. And then they really lose that beautiful, distinct Reformed faith and tradition and liturgy. So, you know, I think that kind of the solution to that is remaining faithful and remaining true and just kind of persevering through kind of each of these different waves of culture and just trying to stay connected to the historic Reformed faith. I mean, that's where our roots are. And, you know, if we're kind of like a tree, that's what's going to be nourishing to us. And I think as we kind of just stand the test of time, we'll still be here. You know, the Reformed Church has been here for 500 years, and I would pray that it would continue to be here. So.
I think another area, most CRCs and ours as well, that we would hope to do better at is outreach. What sort of outreach stuff have you done in the past in Florida? And what do you enjoy about doing outreach beyond our church congregation?
Yeah, so in Florida, my wife and I have been involved. So Manatee County is that's the county our church is in, is really underserved in terms of foster and adoptive care. So one of the things I kind of jumped right into is, like, what is my church already doing? You know, what kind of organizations, community organizations is my church already connected with? And then how can I help our, you know, kind of funnel our congregation members towards those ministries? I think my church is very generous in giving. And so I've really tried to encourage them to be generous with their time and talents and actually physically kind of being there and working with those ministries. So we've started a couple different things just to kind of support the foster care ministries in our community. One of the things that I love doing is called Parents Night Out. So we offer respite care to foster families where the parents can just drop off foster kids or adoptive kids at the church. You know, they get 3 hours to go on a date or go home and clean up or do whatever they want. And I usually get a lot of people from the congregation who come and watch the kids, and we just have a wonderful time hanging out with the kids and blessing them. So that's one of the kind of outreach things I like to do. But really, I think the heart of outreach, especially kind of from a pastoral standpoint, is equipping the saints for ministry. And so that is kind of one of the things I feel called to, is equipping my congregation for ministry. So it's not like, oh, this has to get done, I'm going to do it myself. It's like, how can I encourage my brothers and sisters in Christ to kind of step out in faith and step out and kind of do that outreach and kind of do that that ministry that all the saints are called to, right? To be the hands and feet of Christ, to be the church. And so that's kind of, you got to play the long game, right? You got to be willing to invest and disciple and encourage and kind of, you know, if it's not really there in the culture of the church, then just be willing to, you know, to love on people until it is. And I get the sense that there's really a culture of love for each other and community already here. So, you know, if that were one of my tasks here, I doubt it would be difficult at all to be two wonderful brothers and sisters, you know, reaching out to the community. So, was there another part to that question, or did I kind of answer it?
Yeah. You talked about Bridge of Life.
Yeah, Bridge of Life. Yeah, that's kind of that respite care. One of the other things that I really enjoyed when I was at my church in Northwest Indiana is I would bring the outreach booth with me to different kind of, like the county fair. They had kind of like an area where businesses and churches could set up, or, you know, just different kind of like a night out at the park where they let businesses and churches set up. And I'd be there with the booth. I'd take a few people from the congregation. You know, we hand out promotional materials for the church, and we just get to know people in the community, tell them where we are, who we are, that sort of thing. And that was just another opportunity to equip the saints for ministry, right? And I would directly invite people, hey, you're going to come along with me. You know, we're going to go to the park. You're going to be there at this time, and we're just going to meet people. And, you know, and that's always good. It stretches me, and, you know, it stretches the people I'm out there with. So.
I guess a question from my perspective, and what I've heard so far is lots of it, I've heard lots about tradition from your perspective and history of the church and that, but for me it's kind of like, what's been the experience in your life that has really cemented your faith as your own? And yeah, what's an experience that comes to mind for that?
Yeah, so I think kind of in that, I think it's something that really all young people go through when they get to this sort of transition point in their life where they decide, is my parents' faith going to become my faith? You know, is this faith tradition I've grown up in going to become my faith tradition? And that was kind of a struggle for me. There was a time right after high school, like I said, I went to college for a year thinking I wanted to do ministry. And I left college, not 100% sure if I still wanted to stay in the church, not 100% sure if I, you know, even wanted to be a Christian. And so kind of, you know, entering into a season of life where I really wrestled with God, and I really wrestled with my faith, and just really wrestled with elements of, you know, even like rebellion against God and what I knew was right, and just kind of wanted to ignore. And so I kind of wrestled through that, and I think a lot of our young people are either there right now or have had moments like that. And I just remember, you know, I think that those born in the church, those who are raised in the church, always have such a beautiful testimony of, you know, there's never a day when I didn't know Christ's love for me, you know, that baptism promise. And I would say that too, there was never a day when I didn't know Christ's love for me. And even in that season where I tried to wander and I tried to get away from him, you know, he was right there. You know, his love for me was still there. There was never a day that I didn't know his love for me. And, you know, so because our God is so long-suffering and so gracious, you know, I wandered back to him, and he drew me back, and really kind of through that period of wandering, just really gained a new love and appreciation for my faith, and for what it could root me in the truth of God's word and the gospel. And so just kind of seeing it with fresh eyes, but at the same time, you know, accepting the faith of my childhood, you know, and that's, I think, really the beautiful thing about trusting in the baptismal promises, is knowing that, you know, that it has a lot more to do with God's faithfulness than ours. So.
All right, I've got instructions to keep it on the short side, so if anyone else has questions, feel free to raise your hand. Montana is a long ways away from the beach. Do you see any challenges with coming to a community like ours or a place like Montana, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, just all the, you know, the logistics of it, and all that, you know, finding a place to live, and, you know, getting kind of settled, and those are all kind of secondary details that the Lord will work out for us. I think that, yeah, we love the beach. We love Florida. We love being warm, but we also love following God's call in our life. So, and I think what we've seen here, this family here. I think one of the big things we were nervous about is our kids. I mean, I have 3 boys. Like I said, they're a whole handful. But just after the service, I don't know whose boys they were, but they were kind of wrestling right in front of everyone, where everyone was walking, and I was like, that would absolutely be my 2 boys. Actually, my 3 boys, they kind of get in a tussle, and just to see that really was kind of comforting and helpful to us, because we really do feel like our boys would be welcomed here. I mean, honestly, I've talked to a lot of people that have had 5, 6 kids, so we think 4 is a lot, but that's nothing here. I guess we're amateurs compared to you all, so that's been very comforting. So I don't know if my wife has anything to add, or okay, she says no. Yeah.
If I understood right, you said something about going for some education in counseling. Did I hear you right? How far did you pursue that? And does that enter into your ministry in some capacity?
Absolutely. So I have an undergraduate degree in addictions counseling, and it absolutely informs my ministry. I think counselors make really good ministers, and I think all ministers need to be able to kind of offer sort of that kind of care that comes with counseling. So yeah, it really does inform my ministry. It's helped me offer people empathy. It's helped me understand kind of just where people are coming from. Not everyone's story is pretty. Honestly, if we were all honest with ourselves, a lot of our stories are ugly. And so just kind of going through that counseling experience and that counseling degree has really helped me, and really given me some practical tools too, and just being able to talk to people and love people and extend people care, especially when they're in these really low places or these dark places and they feel completely unlovable. Just being able to, extend the love of Christ to them in those moments has absolutely been part of that counseling experience.
So kind of going off of Tammy's question, would you be willing to do child counseling at all? I feel like Christian counseling for children is pretty rare in this area. Would you be willing to do something like that?
Yeah, and I think absolutely. I love meeting with children. I think the one caution would be to, do you want a pastor or a counselor? And there is kind of a good boundaries to have when you're a pastor. Not, pastors counsel with people, absolutely, but after a certain amount of time, it's sort of the call is to kind of refer it out to the professional. So I wouldn't call myself a professional. I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm a pastor. I'm called to ministry. So my approach would be different. Yeah, I would absolutely love to meet with kids and offer that love and that support and that empathy to kids. But there would come a point where it would be sort of the right call to refer that out to kind of the professional counselor, the licensed counselor. And so, it's important to know that your pastors have good boundaries, right? To know that that they're not going to try to take something on that they're not called to do. And so I feel called to counsel with people, but right now I'm not called to be a counselor, if that makes sense.
I've got a quick question. So if I understand correctly, it sounds like the majority of the time you've been in ministry, it's been in a team aspect with another pastor, at least. That seems like kind of a unique background in the CRC church. There's a lot of churches with just a single pastor. And with your experience coming from multiple team environments, what strengths do you feel that you would bring from that to a team environment here?
Yeah, ministry is really, it's never a solo thing. So even your pastors, your sole pastors, they have a council that's supporting them. And so that's kind of how I see it is coming from a team, doing ministry as a team, you're kind of a united front. pastors kind of get a target painted on their backs every once in a while. And people feel like they're free to criticize. It's open season on pastors all the time. So to be kind of part of a team, right? That team then kind of bears the weight of that criticism. It's not just the individual. And beyond just that team, so beyond just the ministry staff, it's the council, right? It's kind of the whole staff of the church that's all working together. And really, again, just kind of presenting that united front. And really, I think, when Christ sends out his disciples, he sends them out 2 by 2, right? Because again, it's not an individual effort, right? It's a team effort. You need your brothers in Christ to support you. You need your sisters in Christ to support you, in the works of ministry that the Lord calls you to. So.
All right, I think we're probably ready to wrap up. Let's close in prayer. Lord, thank you for this Sabbath day, and thank you that we could get together and share food as a congregation. Thank you for leading Paige and James to be with us today, and be with Bethel CRC, and help James and Paige as they travel back home. And your will be done in this process. And